Today, we have an exceptional guest on our podcast, Anthony Flores. He's a Stanford Philosophy graduate, he's a renowned copywriter, and he's a gamma god in the world of brainwave meditation. Welcome to Noble Warrior, Anthony. Thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So I am quite curious about how I was introduced to you. Our mutual friend, Dr. Drew, the chief architect of 40 years of Zen, he called you a Gamma god. So tell us more about what that means.
um, I don't know. it I can go back. So gamma, I think probably a lot of people, it's a newer brain. I mean, it's a more recently researched and certainly more recently trained brainwave. For those of you who are not um, familiar with like all of the different brainwaves, they're typically there's a scale from like slowest to fastest, with delta, what we experience in sleep, being the slowest, then theta, which is where we're like drowsy, lucid dreamy kind of state. That's just above delta. It's a little faster, usually like 3 to 7. Above theta is alpha, which is more of like a flow state, gratitude, joy, brainwave, and then beta, which is what we're like awaken most of the time. And there's a range of beta. There's some healthier sort of like flow state ranges of beta, and then there's some anxiety sort of ranges of beta. A lot of drugs, a lot of people are sort of indirectly, I think, familiar with brainwaves because Adderall and Ritalin and sort of attention drugs will just artificially like stimulate beta so that you can focus a lot, and that's a particular range. And then above beta is gamma, and that's like 40 hertz and above. And gamma is a very unique brainwave state in the sense that it's extremely electric and energizing and blissful, but it's mystical. But it's also associated with like high levels of cognition, and you can be calm also in it. So the monks that they studied, for example, and there was one study on this Tibetan monk. They called him like the world's happiest man. He produced high levels of, at the University of Wisconsin, he produced high levels of gamma brainwaves, but he was just quite calm. And a lot of the monks in the studies, they would meditate on compassion. Gamma, in high states of gamma, you're also very compassionate and feeling like one with all beings and all of existence. So that's some context on gamma. And then I hadn't really heard of it when I first got into neurofeedback and brainwave training. I learned about it through Dave Asprey, the creator of Bulletproof Coffee, and he had partnered with a company called BioCybernaut that was doing these intensives where for 1 week you would train alpha brainwaves, and then basically you would work with a therapist and you would do forgiveness work. So they had a really unique process in the sense that they used technology to like scan your emotions, and they would see where emotions you were not like in denial about, and then they would find things in your life that you could forgive that were sort of like connected to those emotions. And then you would go and you would train your brain, and in a deep state where you had access to more of your unconscious, you would forgive, and you would see your brainwaves start to like your alpha brainwaves, you could literally see them go up in real time as you forgave and as you let go of more and more. And so I started doing that, and I began unlocking this like gift for controlling my brainwaves that was a little bit unique in the sense that I could use, and we could talk about this more in depth, but I was using energy in my nervous system to modulate my brainwaves, and so I could shift my state and then just move more energy and current through my nervous system, and that would give me higher and higher levels of alpha. But I didn't really know anything about gamma. Then when I met Dr. Drew, he was the first person that I met who could actually measure and train gamma waves. So I was like, all right, I'll try it. And then it turns out that like what I was already doing produced even more results in the in the gamma frequency. And so that just started unlocking and I started, because one of the things that's really cool about neurofeedback is it's in this process that we'll probably talk about more. It's an accelerator for. I should also give people some context. Neurofeedback is essentially it's technology where they put electrodes on the scalp and they read brainwaves through EEG, and then you get like a sound that rewards your brain for producing more of a particular wave. So whatever the wave you're training, you will hear more like chimes or bell sound, whatever the sound that's selected, and then that reward like mirrors back, like positive. That's how the brain learns. It's just one of the core behavioral models that the work is based on. And you see it, the brain, once it sort of locks in and it starts saying like, oh, if I produce more of this wave, I get more sound. It just accelerates it more. And it also gives you the ability, what I like about it is it gives you the ability to like try different things mentally and emotionally and energetically while you're in that training process. And you can see in real time what actually gives you more feedback, more sound, more of that brainwave. And then,
Can you pause real quick? When you say mentally, physiologically, can you say more about that? What does that mean?
yeah. Yes, because a lot of it's easy to think in the context of brainwaves that it's all mental, but in reality, it's like our whole state affects the brainwave levels that we're producing. It's not just what we hold in mind, it's what we feel in our bodies. It's even that the energy that sort of is in that it moves through our nervous system. And I think what allowed me to have such outlier results in neurofeedback is that I saw that very quickly, that like whatever I would think would only move the needle a tiny bit in terms of the feedback and the sound that I got. But if I like expanded my emotional and energetic feeling state and I moved more current or more energy through my nervous system and through my body, that would like skyrocket my brain waves. And so that gave me like a greater ability to control and access higher levels of amplitude and coherence in the neurofeedback process.
Interesting. So this is my simple mind trying to grasp this. The phenomenology of emotional state, like say
Mhm.
joy as an example. Uh, there is a brainwave component to it, let's say gamma wave or whatever the
Mhm.
wave is. The cause and effect can also be flipped. So I can actually intentionally think about a joyous moment, a joyous phenomenon, and then also trigger the brainwave as well. Is that
Yeah,
what I'm hearing accurately? So it's cause and
that's
effect, and if I
accurate.
can cause
Yes. Yeah.
back and forth.
If you can consciously generate more joy or gratitude, um, like you would produce higher levels of alpha and gamma. At the same time, if you train those and your brain just starts to learn, that will also produce like by just the optimization, like the increase in production of those waves, you will generate more joy and more of those feelings. So it works both ways. You're right.
So here's a question I have as a follow-up there. Is then putting yourself in, let's say, gamma wave more would
Mhm.
then sustain your joy? So, for example, let's say I have
Mhm.
a thought of children laughing, or, this one time I went to Joshua Tree or Burning Man, whatever the case may be, is a joyous moment that is
Mhm.
a trigger for my gamma waves to fire. And then through the uh, repeated practice, then I can sustain that joy even without the initial triggering memory. Is that an accurate reflection, or is that
Yes.
too much projection?
No, no, that's actually a huge insight that you're bringing up, and it's something that I've been considering more and more deeply because I think one of the keys to being happy, to performing at higher levels as a human being, um, if you believe in the phenomenon of like manifesting or attracting or however, whatever language not everybody is comfortable. For some people, that's too woo-woo. Some people, that's all they know. But there's science around that, in terms of what we hold in mind and our state sort of reflecting our reality and creating or manifesting. But part of so much of that depends on your ability to stay in a continuous state, your ability to modulate your state, and then even to be so strong in that state that I don't even think you hardly have to self-modulate it. It self perpetuates. And one of the things that I think one of the big gifts of brainwave training is your capacity to sort of remain in state more continuously and in a more amplified way. As I've gotten more into this, like for people, let's just take for example, people who want, like, people hear, oh, if I hold something in mind and I feel like I'm already there, then that's the secret, like that, to manifesting like what I want. But most people, for example, it's very difficult for them to continuously hold in mind and feel what they are creating without getting distracted, breaking the state, the roller coaster of feeling up and down. But if you can control your brain waves, you can essentially stay in a high state more throughout the day and more continuously, and in theory have more creative potential to actualize like whatever you want, because you're not dipping in and out of the zone like a lot of people are, and your thoughts are more. I believe that our thoughts are sort of a byproduct of our state, rather than, a lot of people think of thought as the creator of state, and they certainly influence our state. But I think a lot of times our thoughts are just a reflection of the state that we're in. And if we can actually like raise our state, you'll notice that your thoughts can change almost instantaneously.
So there's a few different directions we can go with this, but
Hmm.
so two things. One was a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator. That's
Yeah.
one. The second one I wanted to follow down the rabbit hole is the different flavors of states. After
Hmm.
repetition or immersion of these states. So I'll start with the first. So what you're saying is. A thought isn't a leading indicator of a phenomenology of joy, as an example. It's actually you experience this first, then it's a lagging indicator, then you have a thought. Is that an accurate reflection of what you said about that?
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I think I mean, it's an interesting, one of the ways I think someone can verify that is, a lot of times we see this in meditation, but we see this in life. We have a thought that we don't like, or we don't maybe feel is supportive or aligned with who we are, what we want to create. And then, but what happens is that we tend to identify with that thought and then analyze and dialogue and go in, and all the while it's sort of staying at the same energy level. And in general, we'll notice that the thought doesn't really, we're sort of stuck on a track of like like a dog chasing its tail. Um,
Rumination.
yeah, and
Mm.
what I've seen is that if I observe a thought that is like lower, for me, like you said, it's a lagging indicator of the state that I'm in. And then I have just the what I've been talking about in terms of developed the capacity to be like, oh, well, I can just energize my state more. I don't need to care. I don't need to give the thought any concern at all. I can actually just energize my state of being more. And then immediately what I'll notice is that that thought becomes irrelevant, and like new thoughts will appear on the screen of consciousness that have nothing to do with that, and that are much more supportive or aligned or in synchrony with what I want to create. And so that is yeah, I
So
think we're saying the same thing, but I'm just deepening the explanation.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why you're the guest. I want to understand how you think about this. So on the surface, though, some people may say, "Hey, but that's bypassing. You're actually ignoring the thoughts, the content of what's going on, rather
Mm,
than embrace it, loving it, yeah, treating it and feel it fully." So can you say a little bit more about how that is or that is not bypassing?
yeah, that's a good point. Um, I would say that most thought is actually like bypassing. I would
Mm.
say 99.9999% of our thought is actually emotional and energetic and like state bypassing, and that we get caught in this maze or like dog chasing its tail circle of analyzing and interacting with our thoughts as a way to avoid feeling what's going on beneath the layer of thought. And you don't always have to go like, I can have a thought that is low or um, uninspired or negative, and I don't have to immediately shift my energy into a high state. I can also say, okay, like what's beneath that thought? How do I feel beneath that? And then go into the emotion, the underlying emotional state that is beneath that thought, feel into that, feel that fully, allow that to transform or to alchemize, and then that will also transform the state that you're in and then also produce new thoughts. My point is that thought is like almost never the thing to look at, and the content, especially like thought is an energy, and then thought has content. I think if you think of, or if you look at it more energetically and you treat it more energetically as a process versus as the content, I just think is mostly irrelevant. It Yeah, and so for all the reasons that I've explained, and I've made the most progress. And you really see that's where I like about this brainwave process and training process that I've been talking about is that you really see there's no change in there's very little change, and it's like it's very brainwaves are suppressed when you're interacting with the content layer of thoughts. But when you address and you confront sort of the energetic of thoughts and the emotions, like I was just saying, and sort of the whole aspect of your state, that's when you have the breakthroughs, and you really see like your brainwaves will shoot up exponentially at that point.
So there are a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to, shall we say, consciousness development, spirituality development, all these things. Um, so I'll share a quick story about myself. So I started thinking about using the mind, using the rational mind to unpack whatever is stopping me, my limiting belief, all these things. And the more I did it, useful, but not as useful as I would want. Because then I realized I was just psychoanalyzing and creating more and more content rather
Yes.
than really getting to the root of it. And then later on, I realized it is the felt experience, right? The deeper stuff, the emotions, all these other things that ultimately helped me unlock the things that kept me stuck for all these years. So these days, part of my principles that I teach is, hey, it doesn't matter why you have certain content. It's more important that you process them. You
Yeah.
experience it fully. And that's actually the more direct way rather than trying to analyze like, oh, why did I have that thought? Was it because of my childhood trauma? Or what's the origin story? And what's, all that narratives to me, again, useful, but not the most direct way to do that.
Yeah. And you've um we've talked about this a bit, but I know you have experience in like plant medicine and you've done research on that. And I think anybody who's done whether it's ayahuasca or MDMA or ketamine or whatever those psychedelic compounds that they've tried, one of the things that I think to me is like very obvious about that experience or those experiences and like why they're so powerful is that I think um, it dials up our energetic and emotional sensitivity, and it sort of dials down our level of attachment to the content. I think most people walk around so fixated on content and so disconnected from the felt experience. And in a psychedelic experience, you're like, well, no, here's all like way more sensory information, way more energetic information, way more emotional information. And then all of a sudden, it's not like the content disappears, but then it's like you just see that the content just is such a one ingredient in this like vast recipe of like the experience. And so it's like it goes into its proper place in that way versus the way that it dominates the typical human experience, and then that allows for really profound experiences and breakthroughs.
So well, let me actually go back to the bio that you sent me. You said that you have set records when it comes to brainwave, what do you call it? Brainwave meditative state. And
Yes.
well, number one, I didn't know that there's such a thing as a world record of sorts.
That it's
I
not a
didn't know they
world record.
track.
I mean,
I didn't
I
know
don't
they
think
track
it's
those
a
things.
I don't think it's a world record. It's a record in so in a lot of these trainings that I'll explain it. A lot of these trainings that I've done, they have had really amazing people. Like one of the first one that I mentioned, Bio Cybernaut, has had like Tony Robbins and Jim Kwik and you know, really impressive people. You know, politicians, a lot of amazing people. And then 40 Years of Zen has also had a lot of impressive people come through that. And so, of all the people that have come through those trainings, uh, to my knowledge, like I had the highest gamma, alpha, and delta brainwaves of that were recorded in those. So it's sort of like records for those trainings. Honestly, I think that there's probably masters and monks and like gurus out there that have way higher you know, gamma levels or delta levels or alpha levels than I do. I think what's unique about me is that I haven't done the 50,000 hours. I haven't sat in a cave for decades or been in an ashram forever. And like I have a normal life, and sort of I've found what appears to be more like a potential shortcut. I think most people are interested in like, well, I'm never going to go and be a monk. I have to have a family. I have bills to pay, relationship. I've got to live in the world. So how do I find peace, and joy in the midst of like my everyday life and experience? And my hope is that I can help, you know, speak to that more for people and how they can get there, and whatever is like their highest potential, uh, you know, more directly.
Yeah, thank you for that. The householder path versus
Yes.
the monastic path, right? You know,
Yes.
to be of the world, to be in the world rather than to what's the word I'm looking for? To give
In the
up.
world. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Exactly.
Altogether. So, you haven't always you okay, so tell us a little bit more about the journey, the subjective experience, right? Because you weren't
Mhm.
always a master of brainwave meditative states, right? And then you through years, months, however many times of
Yeah.
cultivation, and then you achieve quote unquote these states, these really high states, alpha and gamma and all these things. Just explain to us a little bit of, okay, so this is what I was before, the subjective experience is this, and now through the progression of this, and this is what it feels like today.
Yeah. Yeah. Before, um, I think I was always like a kind person, always like, and I was pretty good probably at like just being calm and not being too anxious or stressed out. But I definitely did feel anxiety. There was like before I did my first brainwave training, I was like, I'd gotten out of a long relationship, and my business had gone down, and I was like very taking a lot of caffeine, like concentrated, super concentrated coffee, modafinil, which is like a wakefulness drug that some biohackers take. It's pretty strong. and then even a tiny bit sometimes of like Adderall on top of that. And so I was like on a fast track to really like burn out and just and wreck my nervous system. Luckily, I was floating a lot at the time when I was doing that, and that was sort of like one of the
Floating
early,
is in float tanks, right?
yeah, float tanks, yeah,
Mhm,
sensory deprivation, which
mhm.
um, for people who can't access like neurofeedback, there is some really interesting technology coming out later that we'll talk about more. Uh, but for anyone who the clinical neurofeedback is kind of hit or miss. I don't necessarily always recommend that. Like you've got to find the right practitioner. And these intensives are quite expensive. They can be $10,000 or $15,000 for the week, so it's not in everyone's budget. But float tanks, I think, really helped me do. I was doing it like a few times a week um,
Mm,
during this stressful period and for many months. And that I think um, really helped my nervous system and deepen my meditative capacities a lot. So I highly recommend that. But yeah, I was sort of all over the place. My life was very chaotic. I wasn't able to make the changes that I wanted. But after the first experience that I had, I experienced a big shift in my one of the most powerful things about this journey is like just your baseline. It's one thing to be able to like control your brainwaves or go to highs, but what's actually more important is just having a higher baseline of joy, a higher baseline of gratitude, a higher baseline of peace or calm. And that's a lot of what I observed as I do these things during the week of training. I would experience these like extraordinary mystical experiences and these huge highs. But what, and I could go back to those through like my ability to control my brain waves. But what I found to be more valuable was just being in a higher baseline state of happiness, um, to where as I progressed over time, and this is like where it's at now, is that I just don't ever really get like I can have a lot of pressure with work, a lot of financial challenge, a lot of like stressors and things that I was thinking about this the other day because even now I've just got so much going on. And I was like, wow, I think a lot of people um, would sort of have like be very nervous or anxious in this state. It just sort of I was able to stand back and be like, wow, I don't have any nervousness or anxiety with like huge workload and all these commitments and all of these things going on. And that's I think a testament to a lot of this process. The other thing I've noticed that is a little bit like what I was talking about with manifestation, but I think it is like I think that we human beings are like magnetic. I think that we the more that we align with our true selves, our true nature, um, we start to just like emit an energy that other people just like resonate with more, and that it tends to draw people and opportunities and experiences in. So I've noticed this continual acceleration over the years, and especially an intensification of that over the last 2 years, where I just have attracted, like one example is that I started hosting parties at my house, and at like one of the you've been to some of them. One of the parties that I hosted, I had a friend who is a crypto billionaire, and I didn't even know that he was, and he had a mentor who's also super successful in the space. And I had been having dreams and visions of a group of like conscious, wealthy, empowered leaders, basically who would work with other leaders and use tools like neurofeedback and crypto and biohacking and vision and exercise, like all these different things to basically raise the consciousness of leadership and have a positive impact on the world. So I'd started having those visions from the very beginning of like my neurofeedback journeys, and then a year ago at one of my parties, these two billionaires just come up to me and they're like, "Hey, we want you to help us create this group that is going to transform humanity and raise consciousness." And so we created the group together, and it's going amazing. Like, and now it's especially right now with like excitement and interest in crypto sort of like regenerating even more. Like it's even getting it's growing further. But there's just opportunities like that that always are now like constantly um, people and cool things like that will just sort of come to me without me even trying or seeking it out, or maybe just having a vision but not even knowing how it will come into being. And I think as we like brainwaves, I think are also sort of like signals. They're signals that get sent out or broadcast, and each signal kind of carries different information or different layers of information. I think what we would broadcast on alpha would be different than what you would broadcast on gamma and theta and so on. And I can talk a bit more about how I personally like use those different waves for different functions. But I think being able to just like become a more powerful antenna in the world is very valuable. It's very useful, very valuable.
So, number one, let me just say, awesome. Then congratulations for the transformation from someone who is a everyday householder who is pretty calm but still has stresses to now
Mhm.
today where you can be, shall we say, equanimous, joyous, right?
Mhm.
Objective observer, even when the external stresses of everyday material life still is there, right? You can actually just watch, like, hey, I'm still thriving, even though there's a lot of stresses. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And also amazing that you quote unquote attracted these type of people in your life. Okay, so I'm there with you. I agree with you. And let me, now use the voice of a skeptic now.
Yes.
Hey, Tony, you're very blessed. Are you sure it's not confirmation biased, right? Retroactively say, oh, yeah, this is why these good things are happening to me versus the causal relationship. Like, hey, I did all these things and now I'm calling forth, I'm evoking these great opportunities that that's in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I would say I'll give you a specific like how I would respond to that isn't necessarily universal, but I'll give you like a personal response that I think like illustrates like why I think it's more energetic and frequency um, based than everything is complex. So a lot of it is like actions that I took, the positions that I put myself into. It's never any one thing, but in the context of even this um, crypto consciousness group that I mentioned, um, I'm not like I'm getting better at crypto, but at the time I was like inexperienced and I didn't have crypto wealth or anything like that. And so what was interesting about these two really high level individuals in the space, like knowing that I'm not a crypto expert, knowing that I didn't have crypto wealth at all, why they wanted to make me like an equal part of what they're doing is it's like there's something that they sense on a consciousness level or an energetic level or on a happiness level or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the right word because everybody will have a different definition of that. But um, and yes, I have some like marketing skills and like some business skills. It's not like I'm just like sitting there like a Buddha in the corner just blissing out. But
Right. You're a
um,
householder, yes. Uh-huh.
yes, but it was largely it was largely about my there's just no other way to put it, like my consciousness or energy, or in terms of like that quality of being that I would bring to the group. And that's sort of my point. Whatever you want to say about like law of attraction or manifestation, um, the quality of being, like who we are, and like that cultivation of the being that we are from moment to moment, that determines so much of our reality and our experience, and ultimately the opportunities that we have access to. and life, because people want to be around other people whose being makes them feel really good. And so if your being is like a joy to be around for people, they're going to want to include you in things, businesses, parties, masterminds, whatever it happens to be, podcasts that maybe you wouldn't be able to access if your being were like more were a cause of friction or didn't make people feel good. And all I'm saying is that I think a lot of, or part of what I'm saying is a lot of this work in terms of, and some of it's plant medicine, some of it's brainwaves. And plant medicine, by the way, is like one of the most profound ways to also change your brainwaves. Like what I've seen in terms of research, and I can also say from my own experience, having done so much training, that it doesn't always require, like, brainwaves are always present. So doesn't need you don't need technology to change your brainwaves. Just feeling gratitude in a moment will actually change your brainwaves. But a lot of the research on um, psychedelic experiences usually shows high levels of at least theta and gamma brainwave activity during the experience. And I've seen that for ketamine. I've seen that with ayahuasca. Um, MDMA, I haven't really seen analyzed, but I imagine there's a lot of gamma and alpha and joy focused brainwaves. And so, yeah, it's a profound way to do the work. And all I'm saying is, like, I just want to inspire people to keep doing that work and becoming more powerful transmitters in the world.
Yeah. So, like I said, I was giving voice to skeptical, responses. My point I'm mentioning that is this. This is what I get, right? At
Yeah.
the end of the day, my job as a mindset coach is to support people to engineer their internal narratives, whatever their narratives may be. Hey, if they like law of attraction and this helps their life,
Yeah.
fantastic, do that, right? If they like how to win friends and influence people, be a high vibe person everywhere you go, fantastic, go do that. In the
Mhm.
end, I just want people to have a great life. So
Yeah.
this produce results, hey, go try it. If it works for you, fantastic, do it. So, um, I do want to dive in deep a little bit. Viktor Frankl said this beautiful quote. I always refer back to it. Between stimulus and response, there lies in a space, and in that space lies our freedom and growth. Yeah.
Mm.
Um, so since you have quote unquote master brainwave states, you can be at high alpha or delta or gamma or whatever the case may
Mhm.
be. You have a lot of options in between that stimulus and response. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how do you choose? Like, hey, I just want to feel transcendent, right? Like drink ayahuasca or all day today, or you have that finer control versus
Yeah.
other people do not. So tell us a little bit more about how do you choose, oh, today I want to feel moderately joyous but not transcendent, where I'm one with God, and all, like, how do you, like, what goes through your mind since you have that fine control?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, I think, I would say that over the last here's the interesting thing about my journey and my story as well, is that you could say with all this like brainwave stuff that I've done, is that like I have a supercar, like I've created all of this capacity. It's like a very sophisticated engine in terms of modulating my state. Um, but it's one thing to have that, like have that supercar. It's another thing to like know how to drive it. Um, and so I still am very much in the process of learning how to drive, like how do I actually use all the gifts and use all of these capacities in a way that serves me in all of these different ways, and that is helpful to others. Um and that's a learning curve. And just because you can tap into super super brain states, um, that doesn't mean that you don't have, like, it doesn't automatically clear. Oh, well, I'll say this. a lot of the brainwave work will kind of put you face to face with traumas and with sort of like inner limits, and then you do have to feel through those and break through those if you want to keep going to higher levels. But
Can you
you
pause on
can
that real quick? Actually,
yeah.
in my mind, because I did it with Dr. Drew, very, very brief,
Mhm.
sessions. He just hooked me up to effectively a video game with, to my brainwave, and then I can watch what it works.
Yeah.
And I'm projecting this, correct me if I'm wrong. Um, Based on what you said, there's probably some kind of prompt while you do that. Is that accurate? Or like how did you come up with
The one
confronting or
that
being
so
face to face
I
with
know this
trauma?
that I know the type that you're talking about, where you watch the video game, that's SMR. So that's like more of a flow state. Generally, you're training SMR brainwaves when you're doing the video game, and that's more of like a flow state performance brainwave. Whereas a brainwave that you would utilize more for healing would be like alpha, theta, or gamma. Uh, Gamma is a little bit rare in the sense that like people haven't developed protocols for utilizing gamma to heal, but like in alpha and theta, there are some existing protocols where you can kind of go back into your past or into trauma and then go through processes that will allow you to transform or uproot or clear or rescript things that happen in such a way that you you actually like heal on a deeper level. And it's actually to continue advancing in those brain waves, it's actually like a necessity that you do that. If you want to, like alpha, for example, so you start to feel what typically happens in alpha is like you can increase it by feeling like a level of gratitude or joy, and feeling that gratitude or joy sort of like expand into the space. But what happens is that you'll start to hit a limit of how joyful or how grateful you can feel and how expanded you can feel. And as you hit that limit, quite often, like a trauma or a fear or some kind of contractive element will like appear. And then you've got to work with that. And you can do forgiveness or you can use any number of tools. But if you actually work with it successfully in that state, then your level of joy and like you can actually see on the charts your alpha will go up. You'll go into like an even more expanded state, an even more grateful or joyful state, and part of the beauty. Um, that's part of the beauty of the work. But the point that I wanted to make in bringing all this up is that just because you can like someone like me can control my brainwaves, it doesn't mean that like I had necessarily transcended all of like my own limiting patterns or things like I would see recurring things still in relationships where I wouldn't like speak up like I don't know, speak out a need, or I would repeatedly be drawn to sort of like the same type of woman that wasn't necessarily like the best type of person for me. Like stuff like that, that wisdom still has to be built through experience. It's just like having more brainwave access. Um, I think what it does is that it can speed up the cycle because you're just more present and more conscious, but there's still no substitute for actually doing that work and being present and being conscious of like your whole process. And so that's a that's a big part of my journey as well, and like where I put a lot of tension in the last couple months as I started to like really want to understand how I could utilize brain waves to manifest more, to actually or alter reality in my reality in some way and um, have impact on more people and expand my vision of what's possible and to create more in the world. um, I started to realize how I wasn't there was a way in which I was not as conscious or intentional about all my thoughts and about but not content of thoughts, but more about the sort of capacity of like what I was holding in mind. And so
The
I started
intentionality, what you wanted to convey.
intentionality,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm. Mhm.
to where I started becoming hyper conscious of like my intention and what I was holding in mind throughout the day versus like sort of being in that intentionality, but then sometimes drifting out and allowing myself to be more distracted or disconnected. And what that has done um, has been really profound because then as you're in a state of more constant intentionality and about what you're feeling and the state that you're in and what you're holding in mind, that has allowed me to pull more on, out from these like brain waves that I have access to, and then I can utilize those where it's like, okay, I wake up and I'm like, okay, what do I want to create today? How do I see my day? Like I can actually go into a theta state and I can visualize the day as I imagine it perfectly, and I can actually like live out the day for a few minutes in meditation in the morning, and then um, I can use alpha to like feel into like, okay, how do I want to feel? How joyful or how grateful do I want to feel? I can leverage like that gear. If we think about it like a gear to a car, I can leverage that gear as I need, and then um, with gamma I can, I mean, gamma does a lot of things. It sort of, it connects the hemispheres of the brain and it sort of weaves everything together. So when you have a lot of different things going on in your, in your, in your mind, but also in your body and your nervous system and everything, going into a state of gamma will just like organize it all. And I think it allows you to take action on it and also download things, as a writer. Um, like when I need to get a lot of writing done in a short period of time, I've found that I can just go into a gamma state, get almost like a huge packet of information, and then I'll just start typing, and then it will just like come out without even me having to think about each individual piece of like what I downloaded. It will just sort of all be in this yeah in this collection of information. So
So what I'm hearing, there are two use cases now that you have this supercar.
yes.
First case, use case is before you start your day, you
Mhm.
envision what's your ideal day, and then you can essentially visioneer your day, by
Yeah.
putting yourself into a state of gratitude or joy or whatever the case. That's one use case. Another use case is you're about to start a task, let's say writing something, and then you can use the state of gamma as an example to
Mhm.
get a download, and then boom,
Yeah.
right away you can just write things down. And then so number one, is that an accurate reflection
Yeah.
of what you said?
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So what I'm also connecting is Tony Robbins calls it priming. So
Mhm.
by having this supercar, you can easily prime yourself to
Yes.
execute a specific task using a specific, gamma for creative
State.
writing
Yeah.
as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
see.
Like Tony, I think he talks about getting into state a lot too, or something, some language to that, um, some language to that effect. And yeah, that's a really, really good use. Another thing that I will say, like I said, as I've become really fascinated by like how do we create or manifest things, and there's people that believe that um, like there's a difference between thinking of or thinking about something and thinking from. So we all have desires, but if you think of about what you desire, most people think about it, and I fell into this category of like I would think they think about it in a way that separates themselves from it. It's like I want it, but I don't have it, so I'm going to think about it in that way. And
Striving. It's yeah,
strive, yeah, it's striving.
I don't have it, so let me strive for it.
Yeah, let me get that thing.
Mhm,
Like, how can I get it? What do I need to do to get it? Like that
mhm.
sort of all of those thoughts. Whereas there's a school of thought that believes that if you assume that you already have it, and then ask yourself and like actually utilize these capacities to say, how would I feel? Who would I be in that state? Like if I already had what I was creating, and I don't separate myself from it, but I assume that it's here now and that I feel as though it's here now, how would I feel and how would I live? Um, and that is a very different state than the separateness state of like wanting and striving. It's a much more energized, much more complete, much more at peace state, because you're not reaching and grasping. And it's sort of a paradox, because people think like, oh, but if I do that, then I won't be motivated to work hard, or go after it, or chase my goals, or try to get this thing if I already believe that I'm there. But it's a paradox, because I think our system knows what to do, and when we feed it sort of that sensory input of like it's already here, and that I'm not separate from it, and it's not out there in the distance, but it's in my field now. And if you really want to get like really esoteric, like it's already exists in like another dimension, and that maybe it's just not like arrived yet in this dimension, and that but if you hold it in mind and in this energized state. And then this is where the reason I'm bringing this up is because you're asking, how do I utilize um, brainwaves? And one of the biggest ways I do them now is that, like, as I hold this feeling of like whatever I'm creating as though it were already here, I can use brainwaves to kind of stay in that state and stay energized in that state. Because I think what most people will find is, if they go into a state of like what they want to create, if they go into that state that it's already here, they'll feel amazing. They'll feel really high. They'll feel excited. They'll feel like grateful. They'll feel all these incredible things. But then what happens is that life, life hits, and they think, oh wait, like they look at their bank account, and millions of dollars are not in their bank account, or their their relationship is like not the dream relationship that they're holding in mind, and they're like, oh, it's not real, and they sort of like their state drops. But if you can actually continue, even in the evidence to the even in like light of evidence to the contrary, if you can like stay in that high state, that it's already here, and that this feeling of knowing that like this is real. And this is like, it's an interesting game to play to yourself, but I've been experimenting with this lately. Can I just stay in that state more and more and more, regardless of like what's going around in my life or my world? And I've been utilizing like my access to brainwaves to sort of stay in in that higher state more continuously throughout the day. And it's been amazing. At the very least, I mean, a lot of new opportunities have come into my life, but what I'll say, one of the biggest changes is that, like, me being in this state of more just like infinite possibilities, and not cutting off the flow of like what's possible because it's like not realistic, like really just standing in that space of infinite possibility. Whenever I have communications about people, about their dreams or what they want to create or what they're doing, I'm bringing like so much more energy and possibility to like our interactions or conversations or experience, that they always walk away being like, oh my God, like I feel, and like people have had miracles, like people have had conversations with me, and they like got new clients, or they got like $80,000. Somebody just sent them out of the blue, like really weird stuff, that I think is a sign that, as we change our state, and we live from a different state, like life around us reorganizes.
Hey man, this is Noble Warrior. So you're speaking to someone who, again, right? The mental models. I'm right there with you. And again, this is my personal narrative. I used to came from the world of data. If there's no data, I don't believe it. So
Hmm.
I was always in the mindset of striving,
Hmm.
and that works to a certain extent, but it wasn't very fun.
Yes.
And now where I'm at today is, as you said, the reality I desire already exists. Who am I being so that I evoke or invoke such
Hmm.
reality to manifest? And so this is the way I rationalize to my logical mind.
Hmm.
Hey, best case scenario, I got everything I want. Worst case scenario, I have a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah,
So
you
hey,
did. Yeah,
what's the loss?
exactly.
Fuck
It's kind
yeah,
of
let's
like
go.
it's kind of like Pascal's wager in a way. Did you ever hear that in philosophy? So it was like, if you believe if you believe in God, and he exists, great, you go to heaven. and you didn't really sacrifice a lot. If you don't believe, if um, if you believe in God again, if he doesn't exist, then you haven't made a huge sacrifice. But if you don't believe and he does exist, then like the point is that like there's not a lot of, with me, whether I manifest like a million things, a million amazing things or not, like that was sort of what I was also getting at, is that um you have a lot more fun because you're not feeling like in that striving, seeking, I'm incomplete, I won't be happy. Because so much of that process is like, I can't be happy until I get the thing. And then when I get the thing, I'll be happy. And we all know that's not, we get the thing and then
That's
we're
right.
on.
That's right. It's like, yeah, such a letdown. What's the
Yeah,
point, man?
we're on to the next thing. Whereas if you actually bring the sense of completion and happiness here now, you kind of don't care whether you you still want the thing, but it doesn't matter as much whether it appears or not. And then
The
somehow,
the the attachment, right? The
yes.
attachment, it relaxes, and then and here's the interesting thing. I'm speaking to the younger CK as an example. When the attachment relaxes, guess what? I personally, I'll make it personal, have more access to new opportunities that I just wouldn't see otherwise, new ideas that I wouldn't see otherwise, new innovative results or innovative thoughts like, oh, I never thought I can, instead of just this is the only way, now I can go this way, this way, this way, this way, infinite number of ways. So I'm not limited to just one way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's a very practical, it's a very practical way to look at it, because a lot of times too, I've noticed that too. Like if I've had a some kind of challenge in life, like I need something or I need to create something, and then um, sometimes when you relax and you let go of the attachment, all of a sudden something that was like in your life, or like it could be a contact, it could be a person, whatever it happens to be, like the help is already there, but like because you're in that closed or anxious or tense state, it wasn't like there was no space for it to appear. And then all of a sudden, um by just that subtle shift in your state, like all of a sudden it's like it comes to the surface, like, oh, why didn't I think about that like 2 weeks ago? Instead of stressing, it was there for me all along. But it's about that openness to it.
So I want to double down on anchoring a state, because there's state changes and there's
Mhm.
stages, right? In my mind, how I'm articulating this is, yes, you meditate, yes, you drink ayahuasca, and you may experience temporary state
Mhm.
change, but it's only through prolonged practice, then you can lengthen that space between stimulus and response and recall the state of joy or gratitude, even when circumstances are really tough, or
Mhm.
whatever the case may be, right? So in your practice, now that you're more conscious about sustaining that state of gamma as an example,
Mhm.
what specific things are you doing to help you anchor that state so you can lengthen that time of gamma, or that way of high vibes or being or infinite possibility, all those things that you
Yeah.
mentioned?
Yeah. I have a couple answers for that. Like I would say that, of course, like there's no substitute for the fundamentals. So meditating is a way to integrate and embed. So, whatever you access, like in a um, plant medicine or brainwave training or whatever, any kind of healing experience, just like consistent meditation or mindfulness practice will help integrate that more, or just make it more of like a deeper part of your being. I find that like for me, breath work is really powerful as well for like reactivating gamma, like gamma brainwaves in particular, especially like the faster types of breath work, um, like this huff and puff kind. I'll send you some examples. I don't know if you have show notes, but um, we can put some examples for people. But that's one of the ways. Yeah, I mean, I've explored so many things. One of the but the idea of anchoring to me is also um, it's a deeper question, because I think there are ways that we can how can I put this into words without getting too esoteric?
You can go as esoteric as you like.
I think that like gamma is one, but all brainwaves give you access to sort of what like Joe Dispenza people call like the field of consciousness, the field. And we have our own fields, and then we have like shared fields with people. And I think that we can like we can start to, by what we hold energetically and like what we hold in mind, like having a force of intention as we modulate our state, we can actually like install things into our nervous system and into our field that basically like will self perpetuate, and so will like keep you anchored. Like you don't even have to bring up an anchor. I think it can be powerful, like if you have an image or you have a word or if you have something that you can associate with a state that will recall that state for you. But I think even the next level is like the state is just running. It's self it's self running. You don't even need the anchor. And so that's where I'm really curious and sort of exploring like how do we do that. And it seems like um, that is like one of the I would say like one of the things that has really fascinated me about the manifestation process and like the being hyper conscious of what you hold in mind and the state that you're in all the time is that I think our desires in that more desires that are pursued in that more conscious way, they come up in us as like it's almost like a spiritual carrot. It's made for us um, to hold in mind and then to go through a process where then we have to transform in order to like realize that, to manifest it, to actualize it, right? And then at the end of that realization or that transformation, um, what we actually like pursue doesn't really matter that much. What matters is like who we became and the growth that we achieved um, in that process. And so I think it's like super important um, to really figure out like I think that there's a difference between desires that we're conditioned to have and desires that are really like spring from the heart and that are really authentic. And those, I think, when we turn sort of our manifestation capacity, our focus, our intentionality, our state, our ability to feel all of those things, and we direct it at something that is really comes from our heart and is really inspiring to us, I think it becomes a super powerful vehicle for self actualization that will take you through all ranges of like experiences and opportunities and serendipities that will um, cause you to grow in ways that wouldn't be possible if you didn't pursue that desire. So that's why I've become so interested in quote unquote manifestation. Is not about what you get, but about the process as a catalyst for growth and awakening.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not about the thing that we want, right? I mean, yes, the thing that we want give us, at least again, I'll make it personal, gives me a
Mm-hmm.
very short-lived satisfaction. But ultimately, what I care about today is who am I being
Mm-hmm.
in that? Am I being joyous? Am I being inspiring? Whatever the case may be, like whoever's watching and listening,
Yeah.
to me, that's the more important because, as they say, people are not going to remember what you do or what you say. They're going to remember how you make them feel.
Mm-hmm.
So, who you be, in my mind, is the most powerful source to that.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question because you're all about um, you're good now, right? You can you have a supercar of a mind. You can
Mm-hmm.
change your state at will. now you want to build community that helps perhaps in a more scale way to shift consciousness. What's the
Mhm.
dream? Can you tell us a little bit about what you're building with these crypto guys and what do you want to do and all those things?
Yeah, I'm working on a lot of things. Yeah, the crypto group, it's called the Conscious Wealth and Influence Collective. That is one dimension. It's a smaller group, it's more high ticket, it's more of like a top-down approach. So it's about like helping leaders raise their level of consciousness. And then the ultimate dream of that would be to create like to use a Star Wars metaphor, like a Jedi Council of people that are like of the light, that have also though a lot of power and resources, that can come together and think about different challenges or problems or changes that are possible in the world, and then have the ability to actually like move chess pieces around in, on the planet in order to facilitate change in these areas. So that's like the long term vision of that, and we're incorporating like brainwave training and a lot of this stuff in that in that group as well. And then the other thing that I'm doing right now is um, working on actually like a series of products that will help people activate more gamma and other brain waves, basically, including all the way to like the free, like things like where you don't need technology, basically just things that you can do to um, enhance your brain waves on all levels, specific meditations, breath work, other practices and things like that. So that'll be coming out in a few months, because I also do want to like give everyone like more access to this stuff, and at whatever level they can afford or participate, including even like, again, um, free tools. But yeah, and then I'm starting more to get speaking opportunities around this topic, because I think it's becoming a really interesting emerging field of like, how can we, um, now that there's actual like science behind a lot of this, it's like, what if um, our ability to be happy is actually just a matter of modulating like our nervous system and our brain waves and our um, the energy in our system, and that we can train this, and all of a sudden through training we can access, we can just go directly to states of happiness without having to need a drug, without having to have even success or any of the things that we thought were requirements to be happiness. Just go straight to the state directly and be able to stay there or go there as much as we want. And so that's like the big question, or the a big theme of what I'm pondering, and like what I'm looking to teach and share with people.
Amazing, man. I know that you have a hard stop at 45. Is that correct?
Yes.
Still? Is that the case? Okay, great. So we'll wrap. So, what's one thing, if people are still listening, right? They're inspired by Tony and his systematic way to build a supercar of a mind, of a consciousness. What's one thing you wanted to leave them with?
Hmm. Um, I think it's yeah, a lot of it is connected to what I was saying earlier, where it's really developing the discipline of thinking, not just thinking, but thinking and feeling and being from not about, but from the state of what you want to create in your life, and following those cues of like what excites you or what lights you up most, and then really making a decision. Okay, like, this is who I am, this is what I want to create, and then being super intentional, even down to every moment, about what you're holding in mind, what you're feeling, and what energetic state you're in, and then um, doing as much as you can in your life, including meditation, like what you eat, like how you live your life, to support your capacity to stay in that state. Because I promise, like, as I've seen and as I've explored all different ranges of like experiences and psychedelics and Neuro missed it, like that being able to stay in that place is really it's really really profound, and I think we all have that capacity, and yeah, that's what I want people to leave with. And I will say that doing things to unlock your energy, I'll share with you a meditation that I think is one of the most powerful like I've ever come across. It's from sort of an esoteric Buddhist meditation that not that many people know about, but apparently, like Buddha, of all the meditations that he came across, like this was the one that he believed would lead to enlightenment fastest. And when Buddhism went from India to China, like this was the one that was predominantly taught. It's called white skeleton meditation, and I've done it, and it has a really, really big impact on your energy, on your nervous system, on your ability to heal. Yeah, so I would love for you to like give that to people in the show notes or however you disseminate the information as well.
Amazing. Hey, Tony, I want to take a moment to really acknowledge you. Thank you so much for just, you know, all our interactions. You've been nothing but kind and joyous, and you
Thank
brought
you.
together some really cool group of people. And from one seeker to another, right? Someone who's systematically experimenting with all different kind of modality in a very sincere, earnest way. I just really appreciate how you live your life, how you know, who you're being. And I could see why those billionaires would say, "Hey, man."
Thank you. Thank you.
May all of the listeners embody and be inspired by, you know, your way of being, and do that for themselves. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
being here on Noble Warrior.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is great.